guys, I'm Dr. Fiore and I will be your professor for business and professional writing. So, this is our lecture for the first week, and in this lecture, I'm going to discuss some, I guess you could say, introductory principles or some of the guiding ideas behind this course in terms of why communication is so important, and then some of the key differences between academic writing and business and professional writing. And let's see, and what else are we going to touch on? Something called plain writing, which is exactly what it sounds like. It is a type of writing that embraces the simplest words and the shortest and most efficient way of saying something in the interest of efficient communication and saving time, saving money. And then we will close with the supplemental reading, which is called Your Elevator Pitch Needs an Elevator Pitch. And that is important because you're actually going to write an elevator pitch. However, you want to write one that follows the spirit of that essay that we're reading about the elevator pitch. So I'll cover all this, and I wanted to say it's nice to meet you, but I'm not really meeting you yet. I plan on watching your intro videos later. But anyway, I look forward to getting to meet you throughout the summer virtually, and hopefully you'll get to know a little bit about me as well. So, we live in what is known as a post-literate age. And what does that mean? Well, it means that at one point in time, let's say the early 1900s, most people got their information and entertainment by reading. So the overwhelming majority of people read, again, for entertainment and also to get their information. And because the majority of people read so much, they were also excellent writers because they sort of absorbed the principles and the rules of grammar and the rules and principles of good writing as they read so much. And it had a very positive effect on their writing because their writing was often a reflection of what they read. And what they read was of a vastly superior quality than most of the writing that most people read today. But the problem is that most people today don't read because we are in a post-literate age. So the 1950s brought us the television, and that was something that spread very quickly and widely throughout America and throughout much of the world. And its influence has been, I was going to say unparalleled, but now we have social media and the internet, and that has had a pretty big influence on humanity also. So we have the TV in the 1950s, and then computers and video games in the 1980s, and then the internet in the 1990s. And I say 1990s, but because that is the year that the internet really became available. But as someone who was in college in the 1990s, and I went to a very good college, but and I was in the nerd dorm on top of that. But I can remember I want to say freshman year in the nerd dorm, there was one girl, I think there were 22 of us, and there was one girl, and she had a computer, and she was telling us she was on it, and she was like, "Hey guys, come look, this is the internet." And at that point, the internet didn't look the way it does now, where you can go into Google, and excuse me, Google is very colorful, and you can look up anything. You can literally enter anything you're interested in learning about, and you'll be met with a barrage of colorful photos and images. It wasn't like that. It was just very black and white, lots of type, no images. It didn't seem that interesting, but this girl was trying to show the rest of us the internet, we didn't know what she was talking about, and it didn't look very impressive. Just looking at a screen and seeing, black with white letters, it didn't seem that impressive to us, and frankly, none of us were interested in learning about it. But now the internet is a really remarkable force, and I think we all use it a lot, and most people are probably very grateful to have it in their lives. But I don't think for most people that change um, came about until at least the early 2000s, because again, using myself as an example, I was in graduate school in the early 2000s, and I had a professor, and she wanted us to send her paper to her through email, and that was really difficult for me to do. And the point I'm making is that even though internet became available in the 1990s, it didn't really spread and become widely available and widely used by the majority of people or the masses until like the 2000s or even the 2010s. So, but the impact of all of those things has been very far-reaching. So, again, we're no longer a literate society. We're a post-literate, and we are considered more of a visual and oral society. And our textbook emphasizes or says that schools, and I'm interested in hearing what you guys think about this, that schools do not emphasize correct spelling and correct grammar when they teach it to students. So I've never taught K through 12, and it's been a long time since I was in a K through 12 school myself. But I'm curious in hearing if you feel like that is true, based on what I see sometimes with students and their poor spelling or the lack of correct grammar. I would tend to agree with that, but the textbook actually says that today most teachers don't teach correct spelling, or they won't correct students who spell incorrectly. They won't correct students whose grammar is wrong for two reasons. One is because self-esteem has become a priority amongst educators in the K through 12 sphere, and what that means is that educators don't want to, or the idea is, well, you don't want to hurt kids' feelings or make a student feel, you don't want to damage their self-esteem by telling them that their spelling is not correct. That seems, I don't get that, because I think my self-esteem is great, and my spelling and grammar was corrected when I was a kid in school. But anyway, so the book says that that's another source of another cause of this problem. The problem being that because we're in a post-literate age, most people are very poor writers. That's what the textbook says, and I'm also curious to hear if you agree with that. So the textbook says that most people today are really poor writers. Also says that many CEOs and high-ranking people in different corporations say that after they have hired, they often have to retrain or send their workforce, much of the workforce, for some type of, I don't know if remedial, if I'm allowed, but for some type of remedial courses to help them brush up on their writing skills, because many people, again, just are not able to write very well. So, so these are some of the consequences of reading disappearing from modern society as a source of entertainment and a source of information. Probably one of the most important consequences, again, for our purposes, is this inability of most people to communicate effectively. So I would love to know your thoughts on that, but moving on. Let's see. So the book reminds us, and I would agree with this, that the way you speak and the way that you write, your writing and your communication skills say a lot about you, and that everywhere you go, people will judge you based on the way that you communicate, the way that you speak, the way that you write. I think that that's true. I'm curious to know what you think, but I think that most people would agree with that. That's true. Definitely seems to be the case. The book also notes that people who are excellent communicators, that is, people who can write well.
I didn't get that.
Sorry, I don't know why.
Could you try again?
Let me just serious. So the book says that people who can write well and people who can speak well um, almost always earn considerably more money than people who cannot communicate well. And it also notes or argues that in every profession, strong communication skills are required. So those are, I guess you guys know that. That's probably one of the reasons why you're taking this course. And I couldn't agree more. Just a quick, well, I don't know if I have time to tell you a quick little story, but so I won't. But but yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think that communication skills, strong communication skills, can really get you far. And I think we're all familiar with this saying that knowledge is power, and I would agree with that. But I would also say that if you can't communicate what you know effectively, the knowledge that you have is not going to be nearly as powerful as it could have been. Um, so moving along. Okay, we're moving now to chapter 1 of the textbook, and that, of course, is McRae. And I would hold it up for you, but I left it in the other room, and I don't want to go get it. But so the McRae book, which is mint green, chapter 1 in that, which is dedicated to plain language. So that is what we are going to speak about. Well, that's what I'm going to talk about now. So, again, the reading for this first week is chapter 1 in the textbook, and then there's a supplemental essay called Your Elevator Pitch Needs an Elevator Pitch. So those are the two reading assignments for this week. So with the textbook, and its focus on plain language, before it discusses plain language, it talks to us about the differences between academic writing and business writing. And I believe this is going to be important to you for the discussion question. So pay attention now. It would be helpful to you later. So good academic writing, as the book describes it, uses language that is often highly specialized. And the information in academic writing is often very complex. The sentences in academic writing tend to be long because the ideas are complex and the sentences need to sort of keep up with that. And in order to convey these complex ideas, the sentences tend to be complex also. Paragraphs tend to be long. Why? Because again, it's dealing with complex ideas, and in order to convey those ideas, the paragraphs need to be long enough to sufficiently explore the subject matter. And the style in academic writing, the book says, is much more formal. And this is one thing I would disagree with. The book says that in academic writing, you cannot use I or you, but that's actually not true. That's a misnomer. And I know this because I have actually published in academic writing. I had something published in a peer-reviewed journal, and I used I throughout the essay, and so that's actually one place where the book is wrong. But overall, academic writing is much more formal than business and professional writing. So how else are business and professional writing different from academic writing? Well, in professional writing or writing for the business and professional worlds, ideas need to be expressed as simply and clearly as possible. Specialized language is avoided, so you don't want to use any technical jargon or any specialized language that, again, using me as an example, I'm in the English department, so if I write something, it's probably going to be about work of literature. but it's going to, I, as the writer, have a reservoir of specialized language at my disposal because I've been studying English and literature forever. And people who are going to be reading what I write are also from the English world or the literature world, and they're going to have similar backgrounds, and they're going to be familiar with the language that I'm familiar with. But again, in a business or professional setting, you may have a memo that everyone in the corporation is reading, and that could be from an administrative assistant up to the CEO. So these are going to be people with different backgrounds and different purposes for reading the memo. So specialized language is avoided. Sentences should be short and express one idea and just express it simply. The paragraphs are also short. Let's see, the style is less formal, and the rules of grammar are somewhat reversed. Now, does this mean that bad grammar or incorrect grammar is acceptable in the business world and the professional world? No, absolutely not. It just means that the rules are somewhat relaxed. Let's see what else. Another thing about business and professional writing, academic writing tends to be just page with text, whereas writing for the business/professional world needs to be more readable, more reader friendly. So anything that can be used to increase the readability, whether those are pictures, photos, headings, white spaces, graphs, charts, all of those things will be used, any and all of those things will be used to create a document that is more reader friendly and more readable. So that is another difference. Let's see. So a reason why academic and business writing are so different, they have different audiences and also different purposes. So the academic writer is a specialist in a particular discipline and probably motivated by something. Again, to use me as an example, if I was writing for a literary journal, and let's say I was writing about a book, Behold the Dreamers, which is set in 2018 in New York City. It's about the American dream and if it's still attainable, and it's set during the Great Recession of 2008 or after the Great Recession. So let's say I'm writing a paper about that. My main motivation is going to be probably persuading my audience something to do with, but my main concern is not money, I guess is the point that I was trying to make. But in the business and professional world, time is of the essence. Everything needs to be the meaning of a document, the purpose of it, and what the writer wants you to grasp. All that should be immediately attainable, should be very quickly apparent, because time is money, and that sort of that sentiment is kind of always lurking in the background in the business and professional world. Whereas in the academic world, that's not so much the case. It's more in the spirit of intellect or learning. So very different motivation and mindset. Let's see. So what else? Okay, so I also said professional and business writing looks very different on the page. It should look attractive, whereas with an academic text, it might look like no fun to read, just a wall of text. But business/academic or business/professional writing should never make the reader sort of gasp or dread reading. It needs to, again, be reader friendly, look attractive, to pull the reader in. So those are some of the differences. What else? Okay, I think those are the main differences between business and academic writing. So again, in the business world and the professional world, the importance of clear, plain language is recognized to such an extent that there has been a movement lately to to away from big, confusing language over to what is actually called plain language. And we've seen this has been observed with government documents and government websites, and also with legal documents and I guess legal professionals. So, what is an example? What am I talking about? Well, for example, contracts, mortgages, and wills, those are all legal documents, but people who are not lawyers need to be able to understand those. But if you've ever looked at a mortgage or a will, I've never looked at a will, but I have seen a mortgage, and I wasn't able to decipher any of it. This was many years ago, so things may have changed, but my realtor literally had to go through and mark the parts that were important for me to read and translate them for me. So there has been a recognition within some businesses and also with government agencies. Governments post and write laws and regulations, and people, regular people like you and me, we need to be able to understand what they mean, because I can't follow a law or a rule or a regulation if I don't know what it means. So hence the movement towards what is called plain language. And this has been observed as hugely beneficial because when the contracts, let's say, or mortgages or laws, regulations are clearer and they're written in a way that is easy, or maybe even not easy, but it's possible for just regular people to understand, this is tremendously beneficial, not just for the people who are able to understand what they're reading, but for the government agencies and for the companies. Because let's say if I'm reading something on the motor vehicles website, or I don't know, a town ordinance, and I don't understand what it says, I'm probably going to reach out to the government agency and ask them to help explain it to me. So, or maybe I won't do that, and I will not properly understand what it says, and I'll make an error. And that error is not just going to impact me, it's also going to involve the government agency that I am working with. So the move to plain language, or the switch over to plain language, has been hugely beneficial because it saves these companies and it saves governments lots of time. It results in 80% fewer calls from customers. It has resulted in less time required for users to solve problems, and it has led to fewer customer errors, 20-40% fewer, and higher rates of compliance. So this switch to plain English, again, has been observed as being very effective very effective for everyone, and also for the companies and governments, because it saves them money in terms of paying staff less time to field calls from employees who don't understand what they're reading. So, and then some of the characteristics of plain language. It uses concrete examples whenever possible. It avoids unfamiliar words and technical jargon, and it avoids wordy expressions. So I'll give you an example of a wordy expression. All the time I'll see students write, "in the present day." That's wordy. You don't need to say "in the present day." You can just say "today." So, and then an example of an unfamiliar word or technical jargon could be fully cognizant. Okay, you could say, "Okay, so I'm fully cognizant of the consequences of getting a sunburn," Or I could say, I know the consequences of getting a sunburn. So do you see how it's just easier to say, I know, instead of I am fully cognizant of? So plain language also avoids repetitiveness. You don't want to be repetitive. An example of a repetitive sentence is return the stapler back to me. You don't need all that. You just say, give the stapler back to me, or give the stapler to me. Um, Plain language uses active voice. So instead of the man ate, the sandwich was eaten by the man is eating the sandwich. Um, let's see. Oh, and then finally, plain language also uses white spaces and headings and subheadings to increase the readability. Um, let's see. And I think we are nearing the end of chapter 1. And then moving on to your elevator pitch needs an elevator pitch. So now you're going to do an assignment, an elevator pitch. Please, 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 please listen to this. Don't turn this off yet, because every year I have students that do this the wrong way because they either don't read the essay or don't watch the lecture or both. But the whole purpose of the essay, your elevator pitch needs an elevator pitch, is to inform us that the way that most people approach the elevator pitch is all wrong. So what is an elevator pitch? It's the idea that, let's say you're in an office building, you're in the building where you work, you get on the elevator to go to lunch or go somewhere, and who gets on with the CEO or the person who's in charge of the division that you would just love to work for. So you have the length of the elevator ride, which is not going to be very long, but you have that little bit of time to make an impression on this person and maybe get your dream job or your dream promotion. If only you could say the right thing, and that's the elevator pitch. Now, most people, let's say you and the person who runs the department you want to get promoted to, let's say this person, we'll call her Mrs. Jones, asks me, hi, who are you? What do you do? Talking about me now. Now, the biggest mistake I could make would be, oh, hi, my name is Mia Fiore. I'm an English major, and I'm a professor at Kean University. Why is that a mistake? Because it's very boring. Every person who gets on that elevator, their elevator pitch is going to sound exactly the same. The name, the major, I went to this school, and this is my job. This is what I do. It's all very boring. And then if you add to that the fact that most people, when they make small talk, don't care, they're not really listening to see your response anyway. When most people make small talk, it's just being done as it's a social. It's something that we do. We don't really do it because we care about. Like, it's like when someone asks you, "Hey, how are you today?" 90 or 80% aren't really waiting to hear how you're doing. It's just a social convention to say, how are you doing? Like the same way it is to hold the door. So the person who's making small talk probably is not that interested in your answer. And that is why your answer you've got to say something different. And the essay, the article, introduces this to us. Well, first it says that there are 4 steps to this elevator pitch that actually works. And the first thing is you want to say something different, something authentic, and they call this the verbal slap. And the example they give us, the guy who's riding the elevator says that he is asked, what do you do? And he says, you mean in addition to being an international bodybuilding champion? And the author tells us that the reason he says that is because he's about, I think he says he's 5'6" and 130 pounds. So he's obviously not an international bodybuilding champion because he's very small and thin, and so that makes what he says funny. So your verbal slap doesn't have to be funny, but it should be something different that is going to just get the person's attention, sort of wake them up, slap them metaphorically, and put them in a position where now they are actually listening to you. And the second stage is that you want to ask a problem question, which is going to lead into what you do. So the author, this is the example he gives. And he says, when someone asks him, what do you do, after he makes the joke and the verbal slap, he says, you mean in addition, He says, you know how email and social media have taken over how we communicate? And then he says, and the person says, yeah, because of course we would all agree that that's true. Um, he says, we're more connected than ever, yet disconnected. I teach managers the secret to connection in a way that gets immediate results. So you see, now maybe not everyone is going to be on the edge of their seat, but it's definitely more interesting than I'm a communications specialist for Ogilvy and Mather, right? So again, instead of saying, "Well, I'm a professor," you want to give a problem, ask a problem question. So it's a question that points the audience to the awareness of a problem that you help solve through your occupation, through your job. So in my case, it could be, you know how, well, none of us. Okay, so hopefully you understand, you get the point of the second part. So you ask a problem question, and here I'll read it his once again, the authors. Do you know how email, texting, and social media have taken over the way we communicate? And then he says, we're more connected than ever, yet disconnected. I teach managers the secret of true connection in a way that gets immediate results. And, you know, who wouldn't be interested in that? So the next step is what is called the notable. You want to say something. It could be a wise quote, or but it's a statement that is so inspirational or wise that just about anyone is going to nod along in agreement. Yeah. So the notable here is I give people their time back. That's part of it. And then let's see, the last part, number 4, is closing with what is called a curiosity statement, where you pretend to answer the question of what you do. So the example he gives, a second, oh gosh, I didn't write it down, I'm sorry, or I did, but I can't find it. Okay, well, if you read the article, it is you will find it there. And the reason I'm stopping now is because I'm at 32 minutes, and I try to keep these lectures not too long. And also, I told you guys I would post this by 2 o'clock, and it is 2 o'clock now. So, so please be sure to read your elevator pitch. Needs an elevator pitch, and that will you'll see what I was just talking about, and that will help you in crafting your elevator pitch. And I hope this was helpful to you. I'm going to go post an announcement right now saying that the lecture will be posted in 15 minutes. I apologize for being late, and I hope you have a great first week. Thank you.